When Jason Kelce talks, people listen. It's not just because he's a future Hall of Famer, a Super Bowl champion, or one of the smartest, most respected voices in football. It's because Kelce doesn't sugarcoat. He doesn't play politics. He says what everyone else is too careful or too afraid to say out loud. And this time, he turned his sights on Cleveland.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
And what came out of his mouth wasn't a casual jab or a playful locker room banner. It was a full-blown indictment of the Browns franchise, top to bottom, past to present, on field and off. The words hit like a linebacker at full speed, and the impact, immediate, viral, nuclear. Because Jason Kelce didn't just call out a bad play or a bad decision. He called out the entire organization. Said what fans have been screaming into the void for years. That Cleveland is a franchise built on dysfunction, fragile foundations, and chaos disguised as confidence. And if that wasn't bad enough, Browns owner Jimmy Haslam snapped. Reports say Haslam was furious. Not just annoyed. Not just frustrated. Furious. Allegedly ranting behind closed doors, calling Kelce disrespectful, uninformed, and biased. The kind of reaction that says, we heard every word, and we don't like how true it felt, because the worst kind of criticism is the kind you can't argue with. Let's talk about what Kelce actually said. He didn't just call the Browns a struggling team. He didn't make it about players or one bad season. He pulled back the curtain and called it what it is, an organizational problem, a system that eats its own talent, a front office that spends big but thinks small, a place where every promising quarterback ends up broken, benched, or both. And to anyone who's followed Cleveland over the last, 2 decades, that doesn't sound like hot take drama. It sounds like Monday. Let's start with the quarterbacks. In a division filled with killers, Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, even a rebuilding Steelers team with structure, the Browns have cycled through more QBs and some franchises have had head coaches. It's been a parade of maybes and misfires. From Johnny Manziel to Baker Mayfield to Deshaun Watson to a desperate Joe Flacco plug-in, this franchise has turned hope into a punchline. And Kelce? He put the spotlight on that exact instability. He said what players around the league already know. It doesn't matter how much raw talent you have on the field if the top of the pyramid is cracked. You can't build a championship team on a foundation of chaos. And right now, Cleveland's foundation is shaky at best, collapsing at worst. But here's the part that really hit a nerve. Kelce didn't just drag the front office. He went after the culture, said it's toxic, said it's reactive, that every time there's a moment to show leadership, the Browns choose PR over people, ego over accountability. And who's at the top of that? Jimmy Haslam, the owner who's changed GMs like socks, who's cycled through coaches like interns, who greenlit the most controversial quarterback trade in modern NFL history and guaranteed $230 million to a player under active investigation. Yeah, that Jimmy Haslam. So when Kelce called Cleveland dysfunctional, he wasn't being dramatic. He was being accurate. And that accuracy, that's what made it sting. Haslam's response was swift and defensive. He reportedly called Kelce's comments unprofessional and accused him of taking cheap shots from the outside. But here's the question. Is Kelce really an outsider? Because if you ever listen to his podcast or seen how connected he is to players, coaches, and culture league-wide, you know, this man doesn't miss. He's in the trenches, even in retirement. He knows the pulse of locker rooms across the country. So when he speaks on Cleveland, he's not doing it for clicks. He's doing it because he knows how winning franchises operate. And more importantly, how Cleveland doesn't. Let's talk about the money. The Browns are stuck, pinned down by bad contracts and worse planning. That $230 million guaranteed to Watson, that wasn't just a bet. It was a franchise-altering anchor. And now, even if they wanted to pivot, they can't. That one move blew up their cap flexibility, their locker room trust, and their reputation around the league. Kelce called that out too. And Haslam didn't want to hear it. But every fan in Cleveland did, loud and clear. because they've been the ones paying the emotional cost. Watching this team stumble through PR disasters and front office fumbles, while being told to trust the process from a regime that doesn't seem to have one, you can feel the tension rising. The locker room, quietly divided. The fans, fed up. The analysts, holding receipts. And in the middle of it all, you got Jason Kelce, standing on a podcast mic, pulling no punches, telling the truth they didn't want to admit. And let's talk about the timing here, because this didn't come during a losing streak. It didn't come after a 4-13 disaster season. It came in a moment where the Browns were supposed to be trending up, where the defense is finally elite, where weapons like Amari Cooper and Nick Chubb pre-injury gave them something to believe in. But Kelce wasn't fooled by the window dressing. He saw past the talent, past the highlight reels, straight to the structural rot that has defined this franchise for far too long. That's what makes this sting so much. It wasn't a drive-by insult. It was a diagnosis. And Haslam, instead of taking the hard truth and confronting it, he lashed out. Because nothing exposes weak leadership faster than public accountability. And that's what Kelce just did. He held up a mirror, and Haslam didn't like what he saw. Now, the fan base is split. Some are calling Kelce a hero for saying what they've been screaming into the void for years. Others are defensive, wondering why a Philly legend has anything to say about their house. But everyone agrees on one thing. The Browns can't keep doing this. They can't keep cycling through quarterbacks, can't keep lighting money on fire, can't keep blaming the players when the foundation's cracked. Kelce's words might have come like a sledgehammer, but maybe that's what Cleveland needs. Not a soft reset, not another flashy signing, but a rebuild from the inside out. Because at this point, what's the alternative? More broken promises? More viral memes? More years lost to what-ifs? The AFC North doesn't wait for you to figure it out. Baltimore isn't going to slow down. Cincinnati isn't going to get worse. The Steelers aren't going to self-destruct. So while the Browns spiral in dysfunction, their rivals keep stacking wins and building legacies. And if that doesn't wake Haslam up, nothing will. Now it's your turn. Do you think Jason Kelce went too far? Or was this the wake-up call Cleveland desperately needed? Is Haslam the problem? Or is this just growing pains? Drop your take in the comments, because this one's going to spark debate all season long. And if you're here for raw football chaos, locker room drama, and brutally honest breakdowns, like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Because when the Browns melt down, they don't do it quietly. And neither do we. Jason Kelce didn't just throw a grenade into the Cleveland Browns organization. He dropped a mirror that reflected every deep-seated flaw this franchise has tried to gloss over with splashy trades, expensive signings, and marketing-friendly narratives. And the worst part? It worked. It always works. For a while, until someone like Kelce comes along and refuses to play along. Until someone respected, accomplished, and completely untouchable from a media standpoint goes off script. That's what shook Jimmy Haslam to his core. Not just the words themselves, but who said them. You can't call Jason Kelce a hater. You can't dismiss him as uninformed. You can't accuse him of chasing clout. The guy's got a Super Bowl ring, a brother in the middle of the Travis Swift media machine, and a retirement tour that feels more like a coronation. He doesn't need to say anything, which makes it matter that much more when he does. And here's the thing. Kelce didn't just critique Cleveland. He exposed them, pulled back the curtain on the glossy marketing campaigns, the half-hearted culture building, the string of next-guy-up quarterbacks who were never set up to succeed. He said what Browns fans already know but don't always say out loud. This team is reactive, not proactive. They chase storylines instead of writing them. They throw money at chaos and call it vision. They break things just to fix them wrong. And the scariest part? They don't learn. Think about it. What other franchise, after decades of instability, would look at a quarterback with 22 civil lawsuits and say, you know what? Let's give him the most guaranteed money in NFL history. What other team would pair that move with a head coach they weren't even fully committed to? With a front office still figuring out whether they wanted to build through the draft or play fantasy football with the salary cap. Cleveland's not just dysfunctional. They're disoriented. They don't know who they are. And when a guy like Jason Kelce points that out in plain English, yeah, that's gonna sting. But Haslam's reaction? That wasn't strategy. That wasn't calculated. It was emotional. And that's the problem. He's not running this team like a long-term investment. He's running it like someone trying to prove they belong at the table, even as everyone quietly wonders if they do. And the players? They feel it. Don't let the press conferences fool you. Every time leadership gets publicly rattled, the locker room hears it. Every time the owner flips out over criticism, it sends a message. We care more about optics than results. And in a division like the AFC North, where the other three teams are defined by structure, identity, and consistency, Cleveland looks like the one kid in class with all the supplies, but none of the homework done. Let's go deeper. Because if you think this is just about Jason Kelce saying some mean words and Jimmy Haslam get his feelings hurt, you're missing the bigger picture. This isn't just about reputation. It's about trajectory. Because Kelce didn't just say the Browns are dysfunctional now. He said, in not so many words, they're not built to succeed in the long run. That's the real warning. And he's not wrong. You've got a quarterback situation that's shaky at best. Deshaun Watson hasn't looked like anything close to the MVP caliber player he was years ago. And that rust? It's not just physical, it's cultural. His arrival fractured the fan base, divided the locker room, and turned the Browns from underdog darlings into a team most people want to see fail. Then there's the money. That Watson deal didn't just set back the Browns. It redefined risk in the NFL. Guaranteed money like that changes everything. It cripples flexibility. It erodes leverage. And if it goes south, which, let's be honest, it already has, it becomes a case study in what not to do. Kelce brought that up, too, because he knows what smart front offices do. And more importantly, he knows what dumb ones repeat. And Cleveland? They're still repeating. This team doesn't develop. It replaces. They don't adapt. They panic. And when it all starts to crack, they lash out at the people pointing it out. And that's the problem with Haslam's response. Not just that he was mad, but that he was more mad about the criticism than the content behind it. You want to prove Kelce wrong? Fix the franchise. Don't whine about the spotlight. Don't scramble to control the media narrative. Don't leak stories about player buy-in and internal belief like we haven't heard it all before. Just win. Because that's what the Ravens do. That's what the Bengals are doing. That's what the Steelers always do. Even when their offense looks like a 1998 Madden simulator. They win because they know who they are. Cleveland? They're still searching. Still running from their own reflection. Still pretending Kelce's words were just some hot take and not a brutally honest diagnosis from someone who's lived in a functioning organization and knows the difference. So where does that leave the Browns now? Publicly embarrassed, internally rattled, and facing a make-or-break season that's already started off-center. And if you think the media pressure stops here, guess again. Because now that Kelce's cracked the narrative open, it's not going to be easy to close it. Every bad drive, more fuel. Every injury setback, more scrutiny. Every sideline argument, front office misstep, or press conference gaffe. It's all going under the microscope now. They can't hide behind potential anymore. They are what Kelce said they are until they prove otherwise. And that window, it's closing fast. Because no matter how talented your defense is, no matter how many stars you have on paper, football is about culture. It's about leadership. It's about trust. And right now, no one trusts the Browns. Not fans, not players, not media, and clearly not Jason Kelce. So the question isn't whether Kelce was right. The question is what the Browns are going to do about it. Because this isn't about Jason Kelce anymore. This is about accountability. This is about Jimmy Haslam deciding whether to lead or just lash out. And this is about the Browns deciding who they're going to be. Another cautionary tale, or a team that finally gets it together and writes a new chapter. It starts now. The cameras are rolling. The receipts are printing. The pressure is mounting. And the spotlight? Brighter than ever. One bold comment. One defensive overreaction, and now we're in full-blown franchise freefall territory. The Browns aren't just trending on sports talk shows. They're becoming the story again. But not for a miracle win. not for a season-defining play. They're trending because someone finally said what everyone's been thinking, and the people in charge couldn't take it. Jason Kelce didn't show up to play nice. He didn't lob some media-friendly feedback about opportunities for growth. He lit the fuse, tossed a match, and walked away. And what's wild is that he didn't say anything we didn't already know. Let's be honest here. Browns fans, real ones, have had this conversation 100 times in their heads. Maybe at 1 a.m. after another should-have-won game. Maybe while staring at another quarterback depth chart that looks like a rotating door of mediocrity. Maybe while trying to explain to someone not from Cleveland that, no, we're not cursed. We're just broken in ways we haven't admitted yet. And that's what Kelce did. He admitted it for them. He said what fans couldn't always say out loud without being labeled toxic or ungrateful. He said what local media won't say because they still need those press passes. He said it without fear, without filter, and without flinching. And now, the entire NFL world is watching Cleveland's next move. So, let's lay it out moment by moment, because the Browns have been here before. On the edge, on the cusp, right at the intersection of potential and meltdown. And every time, they've chosen the same path. Push the blame outward, protect the brand, and hope the fans forget. But this time, it's not going away. Because this wasn't just a fan tweet, or a shady analyst, or a bitter former player. This was Jason Kelce, one of the most respected players in football. A guy who doesn't do fake headlines. A guy who speaks because he knows you'll listen. And Haslam's reaction? It didn't just prove Kelce's point. It punched it in bold red font. That level of defensiveness? That's not strength. That's not leadership. That's ego in a panic. That's the kind of response you give when you're not angry at the critique. You're angry that someone dared to make it public. But let's keep it real. When has Haslam ever truly embraced accountability? When the Browns made the most controversial trade in modern NFL history and signed Deshaun Watson to a fully guaranteed, record-shattering deal while he still faced dozens of active legal cases, what was the public-facing message? We did our homework. That was it. They put on their serious faces. They rolled out the legal team. They dropped a few carefully crafted statements and hoped it would all blow over. They never once took ownership of the firestorm. They lit with $1 billion lighter. And now, when a respected veteran calls out the cultural rot that move helped accelerate, suddenly it's too far? No, it's not too far. It's just the first time someone said it from a place of undeniable credibility. Because let's not forget, Jason Kelce knows winning. He knows leadership. He's lived in a building with real structure, real accountability, and real culture. He's earned the right to call out dysfunction. He's not doing it for attention. He's doing it because people listen to him in a way they don't listen to executives or PR teams. And what's Cleveland's counter to that? Whining about respect? The Browns are being criticized not because they're bad, but because they're wasting good, wasting talent, wasting time, wasting opportunity. They've got pro bowlers. They've got elite defensive players. They got a fan base that still shows up in sub-zero wind chill just to scream their lungs out for a team that barely reciprocates that love. And how do they repay that passion? By taking every critique personally, spinning the narrative, and refusing to look in the mirror. Jason Kelce's words weren't just a hit piece. They were a warning. He wasn't trying to burn the franchise down. He was telling them, fix it before it's too late. Fix the internal chaos. Fix the identity crisis. Fix the obsession with optics over outcomes. Because here's the truth nobody wants to say, but everybody feels. If the Browns don't figure this out soon, this whole era will end up as another lost chapter. Another season where they almost had it. Another team that looked good on paper and fell apart on Sundays. Another quarterback experiment gone sideways. Another coaching staff turnover. Another GM firing. Another press conference filled with meaningless platitudes. And in a division like the AFC North, stagnation is suicide. The Ravens reload every year. The Bengals have Joe Burrow locked in for a decade. The Steelers? They're built on granite and never implode, no matter how bland the offense looks. Meanwhile, Cleveland keeps trying to patch a cracked foundation with duct tape and PR statements. But now, the patch job's peeling off. And it's not just Kelce anymore. Other players are watching. Other analysts are chiming in. The fan base is restless. The locker room? Quiet, but not in a good way. There's tension. There's fatigue. There's confusion about who's actually steering the ship. Because when the owner is more concerned about a podcast quote than the product on the field, that's not leadership. That's fragility. So what happens next? That's the terrifying part. Because this season, right now, could be salvaged. There's enough talent, enough hunger, enough moments left to shift the narrative. But not if leadership continues to treat every critique like a personal attack. Not if Jimmy Haslam keeps using deflection as a shield. Not if the team continues to operate like the goal is to be right, not to get better. Because Kelce's words weren't about tearing the Browns down. They were about waking them up. And what do you do when someone wakes you up with the truth? You don't curse them. You thank them. You take it to heart. You look around and ask yourself, are we actually building something here? Or are we just pretending? Because if they don't ask those questions now, someone else will be asking them after another wasted season, another lost locker room, another top 10 draft pick. And by then, it's too late. So, Cleveland, what's it going to be? Another meltdown? Or a moment of actual change? Because if you really want to prove Jason Kelce wrong, don't send out statements. Don't leak quotes. Don't throw tantrums behind closed doors. Win. Lead. Fix what's broken. Because no one's rooting against you. They're just done rooting for a version of you that refuses to evolve. Now let's hear from you. Was Jason Kelce's critique outlined? Or was it exactly what Cleveland needed to hear? Can Jimmy Haslam finally lead with humility? Or is this just another chapter in the Browns' never-ending identity crisis? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's go all the way in on this. And if you're here for the full story, the unfiltered, dramatic, brutally honest truth about the NFL's most chaotic teams, hit like, subscribe, and turn that bell on. Because whether it's media meltdowns, franchise feuds, or leadership breakdowns, we're covering it all. And Cleveland? This might just be your last warning.